management of Tech Mahindra on the event of the quarterly numbers. I have with me the CEO, Mr. CP Gurnani, and Mr. Manoj Bhatt, who is the CFO of the company. Thank you both of you for joining me. Mr. Gurnani, over the past couple of quarters, we've been talking much about the progress of allocation of 5G, especially in some of the European countries. I think what is on everyone's mind at this point in time is where does this allocation trend stand? What can we expect in the months to come? How are you reading into these things?
You know, when you look at the 5G spectrum allocation, most of the countries are still in the process of allocating spectrum. Number two is, if you look at the telcos allocating their capital spend, at this stage, most of them are trying to evaluate the technologies that are available. Because the 5G as a technology is a lot more open technology. Right. For example, we go in a consortium with Cisco and Altiostar, we are able to modernize the radio networks, right. Whereas somebody else may decide to do a solution which is more upgrade of an 4G, or may decide to do a solution which is slightly different. Right. So I think it's an evaluation of technology phase that is going on, a fair amount of trials, a fair amount of proofs of concept. What we have also seen is that the lead is coming in from China, US, Japan and Korea. Okay. So frankly, European companies are not very aggressive on 5G at the moment. And even Asian companies, I mean, I'm not saying Japan and Korea or China, but it is more about that it has not become a universal trend. Okay. However, it's heartening to see the way Samsung and some other companies are working with the ecosystem, working with the system integrators like us, to provide 5G solution, not only for the consumer, but for the enterprise also.
Okay. All right. Well, there's another word on talent then. And I'm sure that the need for workforce and their requirement from the workforce is also going to change as we move into it and adapt to all the technologies that the company will have to adapt to. Eventually, at this point in time, what the entire industry is perhaps facing is a little bit of a talent crunch. It's actually evident in several of these earnings too. Can you tell me a little more about how this is going to pan out for the company as we move into the next couple of quarters, perhaps, with respect to talent and perhaps some challenges here?
So, Agam, the interesting point is, I've now been in this industry for almost 40 years. And my biggest contribution on a day-to-day basis has always been to have the right skill at the right time.
Sure.
Right? I mean, so it is the supply chain of our industry.
Right.
And nobody has ever got a perfect supply chain, whether it is a manufacturing or whether it is an IT industry. So I can only say is that we are constantly improving on it.
Right.
Yes, at this stage, the skills that you get from the college are skills that are not needed or not in demand from the industry. Yeah. So there is a gap. That gap is fulfilled by TechM investing a lot more on skill development, a lot more on its own university and on its own training. So my belief is that we can only fix the supply chain by making sure that there is a curriculum change at the school level, there is a curriculum change at the college level, and we are able to get the right faculty also to be able to provide, because the change in the current technologies landscape is exponential.
Right. Okay. So, Manoj, if you can comment on this, has this had a short-term impact on operations? These investments that you are putting in workforce, also, if at all there is any outsourcing, any subcontractor costs which have increased, one, if there is an impact, two, if this impact can last for at least a couple of quarters?
So Agam, there is definitely, if as you see the talent pool needs change. Second, there's a geographic factor to it. So there's certain locations outside India, within India, certain skill sets are more available in some cities. So there will always be subcontracting, which we have used in the past. In fact, if you look at subcontracting cost as a percentage of our total cost, it's I think amongst the higher numbers, because we've always believed that the entire model depends on having a network of partners, and these partners could be across the spectrum in terms of capabilities and skills. So that's a philosophy. And if you look at TechM Next, which is where we are headed towards, it's all about a collaboration ecosystem, which will then bring the best of capabilities from our partners and stitch together a solution for the customer. I think if you are asking me, is it already in the baseline? I think it's already in the baseline, so I don't see it as anything adverse or positive going forward. So I think it is already in the baseline, and that's something which we should be able to manage as we go forward.
Okay, Manoj, just for this specific quarter, there has been a pleasant surprise with respect to margins. That's the reason why I want to talk about margins in this channel. In that case, how has currency panned out for you guys, and what about the other factors that are actually, aiding margins?
So currency has had no impact because the average rupee rate has been roughly the same Q2 and Q3. Sure. So reality is, if I really look at it, two things. One is automation and some of the optimization in terms of utilization. That's been the margin lever for almost the entire margin. And that's something which, if you really step back, I think there are 4 key levers we talked about. One is portfolio companies. Second is automation and how we invest in creating our own platform and using that. Third is, of course, utilization and how we look at workforce and how we look at talent. And the fourth is in terms of managing the pyramid and also managing the revenue mix. And if I look at that, and it's been a consistent 7-quarter journey of managing that. And clearly, we have done well on certain parameters, and there are something else which are potential future levers. For example, portfolio, we can do some more. Some of the automation initiatives, we can do some more. So those will be future levers for us.
Okay. Mr. Gurnani, in the past 1 or 2 quarters, you've also made some acquisitions such as Inter Informatics and Dynacommerce. That's the very recent one. How does this play out? Are these acquisitions because of the requirements of the company, or is this something that is going to drive growth? My question really is to do with, is it to do with catering to clients at this point in time, or will that, of course, eventually attract clients too?
So, in the last few months, we announced 3 acquisitions. One is an acquisition in Czechoslovakia, where we said we are acquiring a specialized firm which is into engineering, particularly the aircraft cabin engineering. It's clearly skill augmentation. It is clearly a skill that we didn't have in the country. We didn't have it in Tech Mahindra, and we needed it. But this is specialized. It is aircraft cabin engineering. The second acquisition that you saw was in video services integration for a company which was both US and India based. There, I think the requirement is fairly wide, particularly in the media and entertainment industry. So hopefully, while we have acquired a strategic partnership and a leader, who is the promoter is now our leader for that video and services integration, I think it is a great help that we have this team and they are able to represent Tech Mahindra. The third one that you saw very recently in Netherlands, reality could be a game changer for us, because for a product and a product as a service, particularly which is focused on customer experience management, I think is a great opportunity. Though it's a very, very small acquisition, but I think our capability to upsell is infinite, and our capability to again be able to develop and drive synergy, I think is reasonably high. But it is a product. We'll have to continuously invest in the product and continuously invest in the market expansion.
Okay. All right. And my final question is perhaps a quarter early, but I'm going to ask anyway. This is to do with capital allocation. How does your capital allocation stand at this point in time between capital expenditure, your acquisitions, and perhaps doling some to the shareholders? And is the management in process of perhaps changing this as we move into the next couple of quarters?
I mean, I can only say is that the company's balance sheet is at approximately 1.25 billion of cash at the end of this quarter. Our dividend policy is well known that we try and give reasonable dividend every year.
Yeah.
And it is a prerogative of the board, and we will know about it when they meet for the annual meeting.
Okay.
Number two is company's core strategy has always been built around M&A, and that is another one way of utilization of our M&A dollars. If there is any change in capital allocation policy, our own capital needs today for building campuses is reasonably limited.
Okay.
Because the market shift is, so for example, we opened last 2 quarters, I have had a capital allocation because I opened a center in Germany, I opened a center in Canada, I opened a center in China, but many times the local governments also chip in because they need to create jobs.
Sure.
So they tend to chip in for the capital, and they obviously link it to the employment. But my point is that capital allocation for our expansion is right now limited unless we do something dramatically different tomorrow.
Okay, so in that case, I will wait for that same answer next quarter, and perhaps we can get more clarity on that
Okay.
one.
All right.
But
Thank you.
gentlemen,
Thank you,
it was a
Agam.
pleasure speaking with you. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Agam. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
City Union Bank, trust and excellence since 1904. City Union Bank, trust and excellence since 1904.
Today we are meeting Royston Abel, theatre director. Royston believes you don't need words to tell stories. There is no way to describe what Royston does, because what Royston does defies definition. Can you say that about anyone else? To be so fiercely individual, yet create music and theatre so accessible, so easily understood and felt and appreciated, not just at home, but the world over. When he turned his eye homeward, he created shows that travelled the world, bringing it a